And that was one of the primary goals of the book, was to really make it approachable and scalable for anyone from like farming like a quarter of an acre of medicinal herbs up to like hundreds of acres. There's so much information on here on how to grow the plants and process them that is applicable even for the home scale.
This show is brought to you by Mountain Rose Herbs. Mountain Rose Herbs is committed to putting people, plants, and planet before profit in everything they do. They work hand in hand with farm partners to provide the highest quality organic herbs, spices, extracts, teas, essential oils, and DIY fare. So please visit mountainroseherbs.com for all your herbal product needs. Okay, here we go with Herbal Radio.
This week's Herbal Radio guests are Jeff and Melanie Carpenter. Jeff and Melanie are owners of Zack Woods Herb Farm and authors of the popular book, The Organic Medicinal Herb Farmer, How to Produce High-Quality Herbs on a Market Scale.
And did I read that correctly, that you grew up with Rosemary?
I did. I got very fortunate. My dad and Rosemary got married when I was a teenager. So talk about having the best stepmother, fairy godmother. And so I was 13, had no idea about herbs or any of that. But I met her and had the good fortune of growing up on Sage Mountain with her and my family.
It's like an artist getting to, I don't know, their stepfather is Rembrandt or something, right? Like,
and I got to marry into that whole situation. Yeah. So
and you got to marry into it. So that's fantastic. Yeah. And wait, so were you an herbalist before you met, or
well,
kind of?
I suppose you could say that, because I like to grow marijuana and use it from time to time. So I was an herbalist in that regard. I didn't really know at the time that plant had medicinal attributes other than the recreational. So
some would argue some of the best medicinal attributes,
exactly.
Right?
So you've always loved growing things, and Jeff comes from a background of farmers, and everyone in his extended family have like these amazing gardens, vegetable flowers. So there was definitely a green thumb there, and we just kind of pulled him over to the wild side of herbalism.
How old were you when you met?
Well, actually, that's a funny story. His little sister is the same age as I am, and we met in high school. So Jeff was the older brother that was kind of out in the ethos, and we didn't overlap a whole lot until college, and then we kind of reconvened, and we're like, wait.
Really close to being high school sweethearts?
Really close, but not quite.
That's amazing.
Took a while to figure it all out.
Really so probably 19.
Yeah.
Since we're like,
boy, I always say that if I would have met my wife back in my like early 20s, it would have saved a lot of grief. It would have been a lot less trouble.
Yes, absolutely.
But maybe she wouldn't have been able to stand me back then, though. I think that might have been the problem. So, but
timing is everything.
Well, that's why she waited until I matured before she really like.
Right, exactly.
Me as, other than her best friend's older brother.
Yeah. Okay, so you are the author of an amazing book, and I want to talk about that. And we've already kind of a little bit, but I do want to talk a little bit about your backgrounds and that sort of thing, and what brought you to herbalism, and that point A to point B sort of conversation. So, either one of you can really talk. Like, what was your plants? What was your experience? What was something that just like made you decide, oh, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, well, for me, it was the first time that Melanie invited me up to Sage Mountain to meet Rosemary Gladstar. And, I had heard about her, and I had heard, really cool things about this place, but I didn't really know what to expect. And this whole idea of like medicinal herbs was even kind of foreign to me. So I was like, I wasn't sure if they were going to be like, making pizza with a lot of like extra oregano and rosemary, and maybe I was going to feel better or whatever. So as soon as I stepped through the door into Rosemary's house, it was like, anyone who's been there can probably relate to this. It was like entering like some kind of a magical kingdom. It's just really not only her presence. Well, I'll start with that. Like, she is an amazing person, and she just exudes the power and the magic of the healing plant kingdom. And she's just like this, living embodiment of the good fairy witch godmother, whatever you want to call her. And I was just really captivated. The smells of the place, the smells of the herbs. I didn't know what the herbs were, but the gardens, the flowers, everything. So The more I got into that scene and learned and spent time with Melanie and Rosemary, the more captivated I became, to the point where I really wanted to immerse myself in it. And so I had the opportunity to apprentice with Rosemary. Rosemary has had for years run this apprenticeship program. And it was cool. I was living at Sage Mountain during the time. Melanie was in college. Rosemary needed some help with the gardens and land stewardship and stuff. So I was living there, and I apprenticed with Rosemary with a number of other people in our apprenticeship class. And it just opened this world that has captivated me ever since and led to this career path. And I'm so grateful, eternally grateful for those moments and the way it has really transformed me and our relationship.
Yeah, we refer to it here as the herbal cannonball. It just like knocks you down.
Exactly.
Just everything about it. Like you just kind of enter that world and you just get completely knocked off your feet by not only the smells and the visuals, but just the overwhelming power of the herbs you have, especially for people that don't have that background. Some people have that and they grew up with it, but there's others who have no idea what herbalism really is until you're like later in life, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
These plants have this much power? Like how can that be? And it's just so it starts you down that path.
And it awakens things in your heart and your spirit. And that was one of the things that was so beautiful growing up there is, at 13, what did I know except that, here's this really amazing lady who is like taking me under her wing, and herbs were everywhere. We ate them. We had tea. We had these gorgeous gardens. I had tons of summer work, helping with her apprentice programs, cooking, even got to do little co-teaching things, those moments where, your parents kind of push you out front and say, why don't you show them how to make the face cream, or how about you do the tea demonstration? And so my twin sister, Jennifer, and I did that with Rosemary for a long time. And then she got to the point where she was writing a lot of books and having a lot of classes, and people really wanted some of the remedies that she was talking about in her literature and her classes. So she said to my sister and I want to teach you how to make this, and I want you to run our business. And I want you to learn how to be self-sufficient young businesswomen, rooted in the earth, rooted in the plants. And so at 16, my sister and I just started doing this for her and sending boxes out to all over the country and getting to meet people. And then my sister didn't want to do it anymore. Jeff and I were living together, filling lots of little bottles and getting to this moment where we were just it was becoming, a bigger production. And I remember the moment standing in one of the production rooms and saying, you know what, I just really miss the plants. And Jeff is a farmer by nature, and we were working with the plants, but we were buying them in and they were coming in boxes, and we were really missing being outside. And so we had this moment of being like, hey, what do we think about being the farmers of these plants? Why don't we not only are we getting married when, he and I together, but my passion, your background. And so that's when we pivoted and we changed from being tincture and salve and cream makers to being herb farmers and helping to supply our local community and then the broader, places in the U.S. And so that was kind of that moment of the plants will tell you what they want you to do. You've done your time now in the lab, but we need more farmers, and we need to bring this back to agriculture. And hey, we're in Vermont. We have agriculture everywhere, but there was no herb farms in Vermont at that time, except for some ginseng farmers. So,
really, that's funny. That's amazing that there was no one really doing it at that point.
Not in Vermont. We had friends doing it in New York. Our friends Matthias and Andrea Risen of Healing Spirit. They were our mentors. But other than that, it was just some of the bigger companies, but no one really in Vermont. So we were like, hey, there's our niche.
No one we knew of.
No one that we knew of. There might have been smaller folks, but that was our niche. That we just said, that's what we want.
I had this conversation with Rosemary. She was on the podcast several years ago, and she was talking about the first time that she heard the plants talking to her, and walking through a forest and hearing them speak to her. And it was such a magical conversation to have with her. And it's amazing that I've had that conversation with so many herbalists since. It's something that I always ask or try to get them to talk about is that first time they heard the plants talking. And it's like they kind of speak out to you and say, hey, I'm a friend.
Yep. This is what we need from you. Can you please be of service to us in this way? It's like that reciprocity. They do so much for us. And then there's times when they're really clear about what your role should be and how, like, that special magic that you have to bring to the plant and human communities. So.
Right. I really love when the herbalists talk about the plant would literally wave at them.
Yeah.
They can like see it, like just like the leaf is waving at them, like, hey, come over here and check me out. Exactly. Like, wow, that's
I think to a lot of people that sounds really like woo woo or whatever, or like you're insane.
Well, it is a little bit, right? I
mean, and they don't always. It's not like they're speaking English, at least from my experience. There's just like they're obviously they're sentient beings. They have a high intelligence.
Yes.
And there's just this connection, and it's like it's for me, it's more of an unspoken language, but it's very clear. The communication is very direct, and you just have to be tuned in a little bit, not always like really trying to be tuned in. Oftentimes plants will just kind of literally hit you in the head with what they're trying to tell you. And it may take a few minutes or a few days or years to figure it out, but they're so smart.
Well, and my wife is a scientist, and so science is very, very important. And I'm also very much a science person, right? But there's those moments in your life where you're like, there's something there, and I can't explain it, and that is okay.
Exactly.
That's okay to like not be able to explain it. And there's something about the power of plants.
Yeah.
That do speak to you and she talks about it like, well, evolutionarily plants were incredibly important. So of course that we have this awareness of plants. Like we evolved with them. So we know, whether or not it's in the front of our brain, it's still there. So, that plant speaking to us, it was very, very important, incredibly important as we evolved.
Absolutely.
So you get back into the garden, and how does that work? Like, how do you go from the manufacturing to, I'm going to be a farmer, which is such a romantic thing to say, right? That's a romantic idea, and I love it. And
so easy, right?
Right. I just like, I'm going to go buy, some acreage and go and be a farmer. Yeah. I think everyone would say that sounds pretty appealing. How do you actually make that happen?
It's a great question. It was actually a pretty harebrained, crazy idea that ended up working out in the end. But we were pretty young and idealistic, and a lot of people have said through the years, like, really, you like sold a really successful like herbal product brand, kind of set up for small scale manufacturing with a really like unlimited market, especially with Rosemary's name on it, to go and like be a farmer. Like, farming is not, profitable, and it's so challenging. Why would you do that? And, Mel went over some of this. I mean, we really saw an opportunity because it was really hard for people like us who were making high quality herbal products to get high quality raw materials, especially locally. We wanted to really support our local farmers. So we saw the opportunity, but the learning curve was so steep. There's really, there are a lot of really great books on herbalism. Of course, there's so many great books on growing herbs, but it's more like the cottage scale kind of like herb gardening approach. And there were some other books on like really like large kind of automated scale herbal, medicinal herb production. There wasn't a whole lot in between. So we didn't really have a whole lot of resources to guide us. Fortunately, we had, as Melanie mentioned, we had our friends Matthias and Andrea Risen from Healing Spirits. So we went up and checked out their farm and hung out with them and kind of learned some hands-on for a while. But we made so many mistakes in the beginning. We just, we bought a piece of land, and we knew there was hundreds of different species of herbs that we could grow that were potentially marketable. We had a pretty good sense of, we were both herbalists. We had a pretty good sense of the herbal marketplace from running the business. But we went overboard. We grew I think it was like the first year we grew like 90 different species, and it was all pretty experimental and small scale.
I still have that first notebook of like this laundry list of all of our favorite herbs,
And like 50 of those 90, we had really no business growing here in Vermont, where, Vermont is.
Oh, right.
Like the growing, really short growing season, and like agriculturally speaking, not ideal like growing season. Even the soils, everything. This is not the the Midwest of the U.S. It's not the breadbasket. So, anyways, there were a lot of challenges, but we persevered, and we went from growing 90 experimentally the first year. Every year after that, we've been doing this for 26 years, by the way. So every year from year 1 through 15, we sort of added an acre and really kind of like refined the offerings of what we were growing and what we were producing and all that, and learned so much mostly through trial and error.
I wanted to just say, like, we became a total student of the plants in that way.
Exactly.
They tell you really quickly if they don't want to live and grow on your farm.
Right.
When you say like, that's how we whittled it down, we were able to really,
exactly.
To look at just, I don't know, it's kind of like having that child's mind again. Thank God we were in our 20s too, because we could just work really hard and
had the energy.
Yeah, had the energy, but we really had to listen to the plants and be like, what likes to grow here, what doesn't, and then even watching on the farm where things would like organically migrate to, and just would make our choices based on that, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a herbal farmer somewhat recently, and we're talking about when you plant it in your garden, you plant maybe 10 plants and you lose 2 or 3. It's not that big of a deal. You still got 7 plants, but if you lose 30% of your crop, when you're a large scale, that's devastating. That's it. You can't do that, and so I can imagine the pressure that had to be on you, especially with no other source of income, I'm assuming, right? At that time, you're just like, you're gambling. You're just like putting it all the cards on the table.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the first 5 or so years, we were both like, again, we were young and we had so much energy, but we were both working like 2 jobs. Like fortunately, Mel was a public education as a teacher and then an administrator. So she at least had the bulk of the growing season off to focus solely on the farming. I was working in the ski resort industry, like in the restaurant industry around the ski resorts, bartending, serving. So we were, a lot of times we were working doubles. Like we were farming in the morning, I would work at night, and I was coming home from school, farming in the evening. And it took us 5 years to really, was it 5 years? Yeah.
It was 5.
When we were able to like really just kind of hone in on farming during the growing season, and we still work during the off season to supplement our income. But I think it was like year 10 or so. From then on, now all we do is farm. And Mel's like been in and out of education, but and we've had success. And I have to again credit Rosemary, because we had the good fortune of coming into this with so many people who had already heard about us through Sage Mountain herb products, and we had met through Sage Mountain and through Rosemary. So we had like a lot of connections to open markets, which a lot of people don't have. So we had that huge advantage.
Yeah.
And then also we got very lucky, and like in our community, because we have such rich agriculture and the network of people in Vermont, we really help each other. And we were teamed up just at the right time with a farmer named Rich Wiswald, and he was an amazing mentor to us. He wasn't necessarily an herb grower. He is an amazing vegetable farmer, but he really helped us to make a business plan, to look at our numbers, to ask the right questions, to be willing to say some of that, like I always call it the non-sexy part of farming. Like, yeah, the plants are beautiful and lovely, but like spreadsheets are sometimes where my heart lives. Like, let's look at some of that data that is really important. So we took, we call him Wiz because he is a whiz. And we took Wiz's like boot camp about like, all right, your farm is awesome, but if you want to keep farming, can you make a living in it? And he helped us to kind of walk through that. So we were able to have both those pieces of like the magic of the plants telling us what was going to grow well here, but then also a really astute farmer business person saying, so how can you really fine tune this? And I credit those 2 things and our just hard work ethic and Rosemary's help to kind of getting us where we needed to go. So we were very fortunate to have like the trifecta of help in that way.
Right. And I had a conversation with some farmers years ago, and there was 2 brothers that owned a farm, and one brother actually went to college for accounting.
Yeah.
And just because they both wanted to run this farm, one needed to be the accountant and the other needed to be the actual farmer. And that's how they made it successful. And I was like, well, that's a pretty interesting idea. But of course, you have to wear so many hats as a farmer, and I don't think a lot of people quite understand that. Again, they think that you go out, you grow these plants, these plants, you harvest the plants, and then you're set. No, that's not the case at all. It's like any business. There are so many aspects to it. There's so many like ways, things that you have to worry about at all times. I can't imagine. I mean,
yeah, that's such a great point. We know a lot of farmers, and the farmer that really wears all those hats, that's like really good at like, the plant production and the mechanics and the maintaining all the equipment and the personnel management and the business side is the rare person. Like, I don't know very many of these people that are like that skilled. So this is where Mel and I are so fortunate to be in such a great partnership working together, is that a lot of our skills and sort of like places where we're not as skilled really kind of like not counteract, but offset or enhance each other's strengths and weaknesses. So like, I tend to be a little more in charge of like the plant production and the equipment management and like fixing things when they break, and kind of like being a little more of the land steward. I'm not saying Mel doesn't contribute to all this too, but Mel's way better with the business end of it. And I'm so fortunate that, because I have kind of a short attention span. And for me, like, I got into farming for two reasons.
You didn't want to sit down.
The two reasons I got into farming are I wanted something, a career where I could like have the winter off to ski, because skiing is like my secondary passion.
Oh,
plants.
And being in Vermont, there you go.
I can stand the thought of like sitting down at an office or a desk or whatever. It just like needed to be. So we work so well that way, and we're just kind of like, we're really fortunate that our skills have dovetailed each other. And I think it's, I can understand the challenges of people who don't have that, who really have to wear all those hats. It must be really incredibly difficult, because you really do have to be a business person to be a successful farmer, as much as most of us hate to be in that, like sitting at the desk.
Yeah, I had an uncle that was a very successful dairy farmer, and I remember talking to my father once about, there's so many farms where I grew up that were kind of going under at that time when I was a child, and I was talking to him about my uncle, and he was just like, "Well, he's incredibly smart." That's he's just a really, really, he could have been successful at whatever, he tried, because he was very, very intelligent, and lucky for us, he was a farmer, and that's and that's what he focused on. But yeah, it takes not only the skill and that tenacity, right, that you need to have to be a farmer, because you're out there every day. You can't just take a day off. That's the it's but you also have to have that intelligence in order to do it correctly. So hats off.
Thank you. Yeah, that tenacity. You also have to be it's hard to be a control freak and be a farmer, because there's so much that we can do everything right, which we try to do. Like, we've gotten like 26 years of doing this. We've gotten pretty skilled at doing everything that we know to be the right way to do it, because we made so many mistakes along the way that kind of like steered us in the right direction. That said, we can do all that, and there's so many things that are beyond our control that like affect like weather and issues with people not showing up to work and all that you really have to have that tenacity and just that kind of like mental fortitude to be able to do this work for a long time, and surrender in a lot of ways. There's so many moments throughout the day and throughout the years where you just have to kind of surrender and trust, and know that one of the farmer's creed is there's always next year. So even if something goes sideways this year, we have like the last 2 years, 23 and 24, were really horrible for us. We had intense rain and flooding here, and this year 2025 has been such an incredible comeback. We just kind of always have to just trust that things will even out, as they always have, through the challenges.
Okay, so I have a question for you, and this is such a great segue to this question. So as herbal farmers, and as farmers who have to deal with an incredible amount of stress, because that's the other thing I think as a farmer, is that you have to learn to deal with stress as a constant. What are your herbal allies? What are you going for? What are you reaching for as far as the deal with that stress?
That's a great question. A couple of my favorite plants. And everyone who has ever known me, worked with me, or heard me teach is like, every plant is your favorite. So I just will put that as a caveat. But
I think that's okay, right?
In the vein of your question, the two of my favorite plants, actually three, nettle, tulsi, and oats. I feel like for me, those are the ones that.
Why does tulsi come up in every conversation that I have when it's
because
around?
of its like adaptogenic ability to help your body deal with stress. It's joyous when you drink it. I mean, it tastes like happiness in a cup to me, and I just love the flavor of it, the smell. The bees, when you're harvesting it, are just ecstatic, and so you have that energy too. The oats for my nerves, and I tell you, I've often said I want to put like a disclaimer: this farm was brought to you by nettle, because nettle is such. Not only is it nutritive to the farmers, it's great for the land. It's amazing. It grows so generously, almost too much. You have to be kind of learn how to keep it within bounds. So those would be my three that I just absolutely.
It's also really fun to hit your little brother with.
Yes, we have some stories of our daughter playing tricks on people on herb walks, but we won't go into those.
I was going to say mine is definitely tulsi. And nettle too. Like nettle, I remember one of the first lessons I learned from Rosemary is that nettle should be in every herbal formula, just because of the nutritive qualities, all the goodness that it provides. But tulsi, back to the plants being intelligent and being highly sentient. Like, whoa, you talk about a master plant as far as intelligence and sentience. That plant is indescribable in its ability to not only have that kind of physical effect of, like, as Mel mentioned, like the adaptogenic properties, the nutritive, the, making you feel good, but also just the way that it is really, truly, obviously intelligent. There's good reason why this plant has been in cultures for thousands and thousands of years, revered as this high, like, spirit, like the Hindu culture. They have plants, tulsi plants surrounding their front, everywhere, especially around the front doors, as protective allies and spirits. And can't say enough about tulsi. We love that plant, and unfortunately it grows here, even though it's a tropical plant. It's adaptable enough to grow very well here as an annual, so we're fortunate to be able to do that.
Yeah, I was. A good friend Richo Czech was talking about how he starts every morning by walking outside and picking a piece of tulsi, and just having tulsi every single morning. And if it, in the winter, he just has it readily available, dried or whatever. But every morning starts with tulsi.
May I share?
Our daily driver as a tea.
I want to share this one little extra magic that comes from tulsi. If you are harvesting tulsi and you're paying attention to the bees that are also out there harvesting too, on their little legs where the pollen sacs are, the pollen of the temperate tulsi is like neon red. And sometimes if you get very lucky, you'll find like a pollen sac will drop off onto a plant, and you can actually get that red little gem. And so often when I'm out there, especially with new friends that are working on the farm, I look for them because I feel like it's almost an initiation from the plant and from the bee people. And I'm like, hey, try this. And when you taste it, it's just like nothing else. So if you're ever out in your tulsi, keep an eye on that.
It's so sweet. It's amazing.
So beautiful.
So somebody's going to be listening to this, and they're going to start just collecting tulsi pollen and having a little business of selling tulsi pollen, probably for an extraordinary amount of money, I'm assuming, because that's probably pretty time consuming. But hey, we'll pay it, right? That's So okay. So when did you start writing? When did that happen?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, going back to like us having a lack of resources to turn to when we started doing this work, and just kind of like really doing it by trial and error. And again, there's some great books like Richo. You mentioned Richo. Like, he's written some awesome books on growing herbs and, harvesting, processing, all that. It wasn't something that like was in line with our scale. So through the years, Melanie and I would be teaching classes on mostly herb farming. Like, we don't really teach much about herbalism, but more about growing plants and stuff. And oftentimes, in fact, a lot of times, people would say, this knowledge base that you developed, like, you really should like turn this into a resource, whether it's a book or just like start developing an online resource or whatever. And we started listening to that. And there had been a few opportunities where different publications, like gardening magazines or whatever, herbalism magazines, had approached us and asked us to write some articles. And I had done that a couple times. I think you had done that too. And I really started realizing that I enjoyed the writing process. And so these two things together, like people encouraging us to write a book and then having experience that was kind of fun doing so, and then also seeing that there's a huge need out there for this resource, were the kind of driving factors. So
I add one thing to that too, though. That was also part of that. I think also one of the things we both learned, and I want to just give this like gratitude to Rosemary, is that she is not someone that is proprietary, where she holds her information tight and then won't share. She is one of the most generous people. So from the beginning of our learning about the plants, we saw a model of reciprocity where what you have, you share, what you know, you teach, what you need will come to you. And so that has always been ingrained in us. Like Rosemary gives out her famous cream recipe to the entire world and says, make it, show it, share it with everybody. Right. So when people started saying these things to Jeff, to myself, when we were having these classes or wanting to write, it was never a question about not wanting to share what we knew. We were standing on the shoulders and next to so many people that had helped us along the way, that we've named and some that we haven't, that we were like, hey, if we have something to share, we should. And if there is an avenue to do that in this way, we wanted to follow in those footsteps as well. So I just wanted to name that because
thanks, Mel. Yeah. So
that's herbalist though, correct? I mean, herbalists, and I say this so often on this program that herbalists are the most giving people that I've ever met. I was completely blown away the first time I was around these people. I started at Mountain Rose. I wasn't an herbalist at all. I'm not an herbalist now. I'm just, I'm just by proxy. I'm here around it. So I've learned so much. But I would never claim to be an herbalist in that sense. But I was here and I just started, and anything that I would say, I'd be like, oh, I've got a little cold. And all of a sudden I would get, all these tinctures.
Probably
or or anything I would come up with, be like, I didn't sleep that well last night. Well, here's some valerian and here's some hops and all this stuff. And it was just, and I was like, wow, okay, well, that's interesting. And then being around them more and more, I'm like, wow, they just truly want to give everything away. They really do
in the herbal community for sure. Yeah. And we wanted to carry on that tradition. And so, we decided to try to write this book because we realized that there was a huge opportunity to do so, and we weren't sure whether we had the skills or whatever. So we started just listing some of the publishers of gardening and farming and agriculture and sustainable living, publications or whatever. And there was a bunch of them, and we just decided we were just gonna start at the one that we felt was kind of at the top of the game, which was Chelsea Green Publishers. And we just kind of pitched the book to them. We went and met with Margot, who owned the company at the time, and some of the other editors and stuff, and they loved the idea. And they said, okay, the next step is you gotta start just create a few chapters and some outlines and send it to us, and then we'll see where we're at. And I was like, wow, this is no way we're gonna be able to try to start at the top and be successful. And fortunately they did. They were really excited about what we submitted, and they signed us on to write the book. And so we wrote 2 books. The first book was written in, when was the first?
Oh, don't ask me dates. You know me.
I want to say it came out in 2000.
I'm a grandma now, so my brain is gone.
Sorry. So the first edition was, I want to say it was around 2006, and that was a compilation of the information that we had learned and wanted to share up until that point. And then I think it was 5 or 6 years later, we learned so much in that 5 or 6 year span that Chelsea Green was this, there's this kind of I think this formula where a lot of the authors are asked to write the second edition after a period of time. And after the 5 years, it seemed like a good time. So they approached us, and we wrote the second edition, which is the revised edition of the book.
Nettle, right
the
there.
Organic
Nettle.
Herb Farmer.
There it is.
And
little
This
calendula at the
this
top.
really this is the refinement of all the information that we've really learned in the last 26 years, and has been, I think, really helpful to a lot of people who were in our position of coming into this industry with not a lot of knowledge and information, having something that really addresses the small to mid-scale end of medicinal herb farming, not so much the really highly automated large scale, although some of the information is transferable, but more about like the focusing on high quality over quantity and how to grow and market these herbs in a, for someone like us on a small piece of land or a medium piece of land. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the creative writing process, and I think you did too, but how was your experience?
We had fun. One of the funniest moments in the first edition was like having to go from two authors into a first person, just one voice in the book. And so that was really an interesting piece. So it's only written in that way, but Jeff and I each wrote different chapters. So our friends play the game of which chapter did Mel write? Is that chapter? and then we wove our voices together and our expertise. And so that was a really beautiful, fun, exciting at times process. And then the piece that was very much, I think, impactful to me personally, watching how it went out into the world, was in the second edition. Jeff really traveled a lot and met with a lot of different growers. And the big thing that seems to come up for folks is a lot of people can grow plants very easily. The drying and the processing, in order to keep the medicinal quality intact and to have it be stable and to be just completely like magical medicinal, is an art form in and of itself. That's not something that's really easy to necessarily transfer. And so Jeff spent a lot of time in that chapter with different models of drying, and then shared the plans that we have found that really pivoted us completely. I call it the magic box. We went from drying on racks to drying in this box, which he can explain much better than I can, in a way that utilized a lot of technologies from bigger dryers and growers and brought it down to a scale that I felt really is accessible to more people. And that's a big part of the magic of the second edition, is it helping. And that's been really fun to see those going out in the world. And then people will adapt their stuff and then tell us how it went. And that's pretty neat.
Well, that's probably something that most people that are new to herbal farming have no idea. Obviously, that I have to dry these herbs, and I can't just throw them on the ground or have them just dry somewhere in the house. Like there's a real process to drying and doing it correctly. And like you said, to try to keep that quality. So, if you want it to still be, obviously the power of the plant as a fresh, you want to keep that as close to that as possible. And so through that drying process, it's a really interesting and arduous sort of deal to do. I was, the first time I visited, I think it was Trout Lake Farm when I first started, and I got to go through Trout Lake Farm and look at their dryer. I had no idea. I was like, what is this? This is crazy. Like the size and what they were doing and how, the effort that went into drying the plant. Couldn't believe it. So that's amazing that you actually talk about that in the book, because it's probably something that I wouldn't have thought to talk about. If I was just like this is going to be a book, or at least I wouldn't think that it would be in the book. If someone said, what's going to be in the book as far as herbal farming, I wouldn't think the drying process would be in it, but of course it needs to be.
It is. It's actually, I would say, the most difficult part of the process of the production of medicinal herbs. Like, finding the markets is also really difficult, but growing the plants is kind of the easy part. Usually, like, the plants really want to grow, provided you give them everything they kind of need to do it, which isn't always a whole lot. But like the drying, the post-harvest processing really is the most challenging, and also the most critical when it comes down to the importance of the quality of the final product. You know what I mean? Whether it's, like, as Mel mentioned, retaining all the goodness in the plants. And you alluded to this, Thomas, and one of the first things Rosemary taught us as herbalists, as far as like sourcing the material for making herbal products, is the plant should always look, smell, taste, feel as close as they did when they're dried as when they were living and in the field growing. And that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of science and a lot of effort to really refine the process. And the importance of it can't be stressed. And that was one of the most important goals of writing this book, especially the second edition, was to really advance or describe how we advanced our methodology from like doing everything kind of like what most people do at home, which is either like we weren't really tying bundles, but we were like laying the herbs out on screens in a very large setting, in a big kind of a converted greenhouse setting, to using a batch dryer, which is along the lines of what you saw at Trial Lake, which is a large kind of like forced hot air or forced warm air, I should say, dehydrator that dries the plants as quickly as possible, because that's important, because the longer they're exposed to the elements, whether it's air, light, all the elements, the goodness kind of dissipates, especially the essential oils. They're really sensitive. They're temperature sensitive. Exactly. So we, traveling around, as Mel mentioned, I got to see these bigger scale dryers in action and really paid attention to how they were constructed, how they were, but also when I was asking, like, how much did you pay for that? And they were like, oh, that one was like 150,000. I was like, wow, I need to figure out how to build this myself, because we weren't.
That sounds cheap, actually.
Yeah, right.
Probably compared to some of the ones that I've seen. It's like millions.
And they
like
can be that way,
these.
But we're smaller scale, and like a lot of the way we have found success is really like kind of like adapting and like buying cheap things, buying used equipment, whatever, building our own. And this is the way that we built our own dryer, kind of modeled on those bigger scale things, that is really scalable. So it can be, the type of dryer that we describe in the book, which is, it's a batch dryer or a plenum dryer, as some people call it in the industry. It can be anything from like, as little as like 100 square foot garden. You could make a small one of these to 15, 20, 40, 80, 100 acres, depending on the scale of the dryer. And you can have multiple versions of it. So there's a lot of the bulk of this book in the post-harvest processing section describes how people can construct these dryers, different sizes for different applications, and then how to use them and how to dry the plants in them so that they come out not only retaining that goodness and all the premium quality that makes these plants so important, but the other important thing is the hygienic importance of, especially with the herbal product manufacturers. We're buying our herbs for the manufacturer as raw material for the manufacturers of the products. There are, specifications that the herbs have to be clean. They can't have microbial contamination and other things. And there are ways that we can mitigate those contaminations and those factors through the drying process.
Drying process. And is the information applicable to someone who just has a garden that wants to dry?
Definitely. It's so scalable. Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And that was one of the primary goals of the book, was to really make it approachable and scalable for anyone from like farming like a quarter of an acre of medicinal herbs up to like hundreds of acres. And again, it's not really geared towards the really high automated end, but scalable across the spectrum. Definitely. And more geared towards the kind of the commercial end of it than like the just kind of home scale of it. But again, it's like there's so much information on here on how to grow the plants and process them that is applicable even for the home scale.
Yeah. It was interesting you were talking about the efficacy of plants versus the green or the fresh plant versus, the dried plant. And I was recently having a conversation talking about whether or not, and I'll ask you this question if you know, there's been any studies that show the efficacy between wild plants versus cultivated plants, and if there is a difference between do you know of anything that is out there for that?
I don't know of any studies. I can't speak to that. I will talk about some of my experiences, both growing up at Sage Mountain and also on the farm, is that plants that are under stress, often if they're under just the right amount of stress, produce secondary metabolites or different things to strengthen their own immune systems, to make themselves stronger, to survive. And so they become very potent in that way. And so sometimes I feel like if you make it too lush and easy, they look good, but sometimes they might not be as strong. Whereas that little lobelia that's hanging on by a thread out there in the field, and it's been drought stressed, and that medicine is so strong. It's and I'm only saying that from my personal experience. I have no data to support it except for my own lived data, but I definitely feel that there's something to be said for that, and we see it in the plants in the field all the time.
Sure. These are great points. The other factor being that it would be awesome, especially for people who don't have the opportunity to grow their own herbs, or maybe they really want to harvest their own herbs from the wild. There's this conservation factor, is that a lot of these plants that are really highly sought after for their medicinal attributes are also threatened in their native environments, whether it's oftentimes due to overharvest, and that's primarily from us as herbalists. So we're really, like, a lot of us are really kind of primarily responsible for the kind of like the conservation status of some of these medicinals being really challenged in their, especially in their native environments. There's also the habitat loss, the climate change, all these factors. It's really important that we as herb farmers and cottage herbalists, herb growers, home gardeners, grow our own plants instead of taking them for the wild, especially for these really sensitive ones, the ginseng.
That's what makes your book so exciting. It really, really is. I mean, for someone like me who is very, very aware of the at-risk plants, and saying, well, we probably shouldn't be out there harvesting them if we can grow them ourselves. And now you're giving them this, guidebook. So, okay, if you really want to grow the nettle, instead of going out and harvesting it, here's the way to grow it, or, whatever plant it is that you're really wanting to grow. So that's so fantastic.
And I also feel like that there are some organizations that are doing some incredible work. United Plant Savers, that helps to honor the traditions of wildcrafting, because in certain areas that is so time honored that that organization has found an amazing way to balance a lot of different ways that people interact with plants, and at the forefront looking at conservation. And they also have been pairing with different universities to look at forest farming, which is really cool to think about. How do you get into the woods and give back to those plants? And I think that story that you talked about with Rosemary was when she was walking in the woods at Sage Mountain, and she was noticing the missing plants. And like, we're not here anymore. We're in very small amounts. So can you help get us back? So I think that there is room for all of that. And just put a shout out to United Plant Savers. They have great resources and are really seed sources and ways to kind of interface in different ways.
One of the most incredible organizations that exist, truly. And what they're doing there just is just invaluable for not only for herbalists, but for the world. And most people don't know that. That's the thing. So it's like it's part of our responsibility to make sure that we're getting that message out to everyone. Is that there are organizations like United Plant Savers that are doing this incredible work, and we need to support them.
And you put a good part of that in the book too, where you did a shout out to that.
We definitely do. Yeah. And that's, I think they're like the awareness that they bring, as you mentioned, Thomas, to that the plight of these plants is really in peril if we don't act upon this opportunity to not only grow our own, but to also just like use alternatives like analogs, plants that are analogous in their usages, but are different plants, because there's so many plants that are great substitutes for these plants that are so tender in their native environments.
So with your book, do you talk anything about that?
We definitely do. And there's a section in the book in the back, and this is one of Melanie's primary contributions to the book, is the profiles of 50 plants, 50 species of plants.
All my favorites.
Where we describe like how
every single favorite that you have,
processing stuff, and I think there are a lot of them that we also offer analogs. So again, plants that are analogous in their use, but are easier to grow, easier to source, and less critical in their status as far as being in native plants in their preferred habitats.
Right. Right. So what is on the horizon? What's next for both of you?
You want to start or do you want
No,
me to
I was just
start?
trying to look. There is a whole section, and I just want to put out the credit for the analog. There's a whole appendix 1 in the book is analogs for at-risk herbs, and that was not written by me. That was done by an amazing herbalist and botanist, Jane Bothwell, for United Plant Savers. So we got her permission to put her amazing work there. And what's great is it talks about the at-risk plant, talks about the analog, and then the function. And it's very simple but brilliant, easy to access. So I just want to name that.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. Yeah.
So what's on the horizon? Well, I guess I'll start. Like for us, we really feel like we've reached kind of the really like the sweet spot of the scale of our farm and where we're at as far as like what we're going to grow and who we're marketing it to. It's been, again, 26 years of, I think we've just recently hit the sweet spot. And no, I'm guessing you'll agree with me that it's been 25 years of like really trying to figure everything out and get to this point where, we've like been building this, not machine, I don't want to call it that, but we've been building this business and this dream for 25 years. And now it's like more like we're oiling the machine or we're caressing the dream, if you will, or whatever. We both love, I'll speak for myself. I don't want to speak. I love what I do. I love growing plants. I love farming. I love being in contact with the earth in this way and stewardship of the plants and providing our communities, local and farther away, with this plant medicine that is so important. That said, it's challenging, and it's mostly challenging the older I get in a physical way. Like I have pretty bad arthritis in my hands. I've had both my thumb joints replaced from arthritis. So the older I get, we have to really like kind of adapt and understand how we can work smarter, not harder. And what we've been doing is really getting smaller. So we've had this like expansion and contraction throughout the life of our farm, and it got as big as, and this is really small in the grand scope of farming, we got as big as 15 acres at one point. We had 15 employees. And that was around 2015, I want to say. And now we're kind of like on the downward curve. We're around 7 acres in production. And we have one primary, like full-time employee, and then we have some other floaters, some friends and other former employees who come in when we have bigger projects. But we really love having the smaller scale, because when we got bigger, it was like more about like managing people and managing too much, like repairing equipment, all that, and keeping the machine running, and not enough hands-on connection with the plants. So the smaller we are, the kind of more intimate that we feel are our connections with plants, and the higher quality botanicals we can produce, and the more sustainable it is for ourselves and our bodies. And I don't see any end in sight. Like I want to keep doing this until I think my body gives up. And it just feels really good to be in service doing this work. We're incredibly fortunate and grateful.
I felt for a while like, and this may sound, I don't know, many different ways for many different people, but I felt like for a while how we defined success was very like the colonized mind of like bigger, more plants, more employees, more things going on, more conferences, more. And then again, like that moment in the apothecary when it was like, we don't want you pouring bottles, we want you out in the field. I felt like there was a time when I was like, why am I not with the plants anymore? And at that time I read Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Welkemer. And it just like was that touchstone for me about like, hey, let's look at what success means to you. For me, it's not about getting bigger. It's about being sustainable. It's about being in the right relationship with the plants, not commodifying them, but being able to like take them in and to also be in the right relationship with the people that we're working with. So all of a sudden, Jeff and I went back to our mission statements, our touchstones, our belief system, and said, let's reevaluate. And yes, we want to make a living. Yes, we need to be able to do certain things financially. Yes, we need to be at a certain volume, but where is that sweet spot where all of those things can be together in harmony. So we just started to whittle down, and also whittled some of those plant lists. We were still at a pretty high plant list, and we just said, let's look at the ones that are going to be able to help us do that. And like I mentioned, just kind of jokingly, we are grandparents now too, so we want to be able to play some. And there's a season for everything. Now ours is the time to be like, helping others fill those ditches and be able to be on our farm in a good way. And I feel like we're there. So fortunate, so blessed. Yeah.
Well, that's such an arc, right, that you're talking about. And that seems to be what, for a lot of people, that's that arc. Like, you're younger and you want to build and you want it to be great, and that's fantastic. And you have that energy, but then after a certain point you decide, you know what, I feel I want to be just comfortable. I want to be happy. And you try to find that spot. And I think that's just that's a great analogy for life, right? Just, be happy. Try to find where that happiness is, where it lives, and just live there with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we made this. We obviously have made this choice to do this work as primarily as a lifestyle choice, not as a means of like financial gain, because this is not the type of work to be in if your focus is financial gain. That said, like, we're okay. We can make a comfortable living off the plants and have enough time to focus on quality of life, and that's so important to us. And again, being grandparents and having time off in the winter to ski and travel, all that, and it's like it's a dream. Sometimes it's a nightmare when things go hard. I don't want anyone to think that this is all like unicorns and rainbows, because it's hard work. It's very difficult work, and you have to be, again, really adaptable to stresses and change and all that. But it's so rewarding. It's like the ultimate. The ultimate work for me.
Well, if it was up to me, educators and farmers would be the highest paid people on the planet. But, and lucky for us, you are both.
Thank you.
So we could not be more happy and appreciative of what you do, and so proud to offer your book at Mountain Rose Herbs. And just we love you guys and everything that you do. It's just wonderful.
Thank you so much. And we feel the same way about you all. It's like that partnership of like having the plants leading us with their hearts, and then doing the work that we're meant to do together. And we couldn't do it without you all, and vice versa. So we feel really fortunate. Thank you for inviting us on. It's been such a pleasure.
Oh, so much fun. I learned so much. I love it. Love it.
Thank you, Thomas. This has been a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. Much love to everyone at Mountain Rose too. We've been an awesome relationship with Mountain Rose from the get-go. Love that Rosemary was, part of the formation of that company.
She basically she founded it. I mean, it was hers, of course. Rosemary is just she's everywhere. I don't know what it is with herbalism. There isn't. No, all of the roots of herbalism lead back to that one spot, which is rosemary. It's just like, that's it. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, you have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon.
Take care. Thank you very much.